Hi everybody. Itamix Sistiko. It's in Blackfoot that I'm probably mangling. Good afternoon, evening, good heat. Things are cooking. if I'm not mangling this. So I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going to talk about something different from what I often speak of, because I'm going to talk less about the ideas, though some about the ideas, and more about how to play in the other place. The other place that's always here, always near, but almost never seen. And often, if I'm bold enough and kind enough and heartful enough, and I'm paying attention and I'm sensitive, then this kind of conversation, this kind of way of being inside our humanity, in concert with other living beings, it often transforms, just by speaking of it, into something unexpected. Unexpected by our common ways of thinking about who we are and what living beings are and what living places are, even if they are. And I may wander in the conversation because I have a few little orbitals I'd like to touch on. And some of this knowledge comes from other beings. Some of the way that I understand what I'm hoping to be brave enough to talk about here. It comes from other living beings. It comes from beings of a kind we don't have a good category for, and most of us either don't believe in or have a religion about. Neither position is particularly useful, though both opposing something places us in relation with it, right? And believing the wrong thing about something, getting it confused, right, also places us in relation somehow in our minds. Before I get walking, I've taken a moment in this place before I began to make a small, very small, but nonetheless sincere, to make a little offering. It's not much, it's some seeds. I brought it with me, well, for all kinds of reasons, but essentially because I want to give something to the living place and other beings. And what I'm going to talk about is something that I'd like you to imagine, but I'm deeply hopeful that you'll experiment with it. And some of you have already discovered pieces of what I'll speak about today, accidentally, and maybe you're not entirely sure how to think about it. That's okay. Though how we think about it does make a difference, because it changes how we are in, or not in, or both in different ways, relationships. My viewers have often heard me talk about living beings and living places in terms that could seem hyperbolic, or maybe religious, or exaggerated somehow, or just peculiar to me. And I won't dismiss all of those observations, but if somebody were to talk to me deeply, I think they'd find that whatever it is that's going on in my mind about this stuff is a lot more nuanced and difficult to declare than it appears when we're not having a deep conversation. And so today, what I'd like to talk some about is maybe how to begin the conversation, how to begin a conversation with a living place or living beings. Like the coyote that's here now, right? And one of the ways to respect this, although this is, in a way, my story is already turning into, right, what we were talking about. Because here is one of the old beings. Right here, yeah. The best way for me to respect the old being, animal, is not to photograph it, but also to relate intelligently with the beings we encounter in a way that is sensitive, reverent, and respectful, in a way that presumes this is important, this encounter, this relationship is important in a not entirely ordinary sense. Or maybe it's so deeply ordinary that we have forgotten much of how to be in the world this way. So I'm going to sort of make a little framework, right, for people to play within if they want, in living places and with living beings. And although we're not going to leave the regular human world entirely behind, right, we won't run naked, mud painted into the wilderness, howling and screaming, though it could go there someday. We'll bring some of our regular humanness, have my jacket and my purse and my keys and my smartphone. But we're going to leave the mindset. We're going to step outside that mindset intentionally. So we will begin with the intention to leave that which is not consonant with our purpose aside. It will be there when we return. We can pick it up later. We're not losing anything. It's not dangerous. In fact, it's very healthy. Because unless we have exposure to a context that encourages us and in some way rewards us for doing so, we may cling very tightly to all that modern conception and ideas and rationality, which I am not here to denigrate. It has its place. And it even has a place in this adventure. That we're on. And again, having spoken of this adventure is different from having spoken of other things. The reason is the kind of speaking is different. This is the speaking of invitation, of invocation, This is the speaking of relationship. Yeah. There's one of my friends who I have brought a little offering for. When we begin to speak earnestly and sincerely about such things together, and sometimes together is with all of humanity, and sometimes it's with all of life, and sometimes it's between me and the living beings or the living place. Bear with me for just a moment. I don't know if you came across it, but there's a coyote over here, so just be aware that the... Oh yeah. Okay, good.
Where's the coyote right now?
I don't know exactly where it is, and it seemed pretty calm. You know, it doesn't look aggressive, but it's on the other side of the path, and it probably left the area.
Yeah, I see. Thank you.
Certainly. So I want to be carefully aware now. Since this is where the coyote crossed the path, I think I will go this way into the brush. Hopefully this is a good choice. Just want to be respectful of the coyote. It is because we're in an enclosed space, right? There are fences. The coyote can have concerns about being cornered, and that's something I want to pay very careful attention to and have awareness of. Because I'm in a relationship with the coyote, I'm in the place where it lives. I am visiting another being's home. And my first move was recognition, but my second move was photography. I'm not happy with this. Though I wanted to share it with you because this is the journey we're going to go on together today. Now, why is this speech not like other speech? In our ordinary relationships with language, the language is very utilitarian and has a kind of limited range of effect. But when we speak from our hearts, from deep inside our being, and we say aloud, you know, I want to remember and be remembered by the living beings, and I want to remember and engage with the deep essence of myself reflected in the deep essence of the living places and the living beings. An intention like this is very peculiar, and you can decide later for yourself, and it won't make much difference if you have authentic experience, which you probably will. Just be careful about what stories you make up. You can say either, oh, wow, there is magic in the world, because it will surely seem magical. Or you can say, oh, this isn't magic, there is no magic, this is something else. Okay, That's all right too. The important thing really is to set those concerns aside at the beginning. You can return to them later because they will not be important unless you bring them, in which case they will become important and change. They will affect your experience. So here's the basic framework in too simple a form. Form the intention to discover whether there is a kind of secret language in nature, in living places, in trees, in plants, in insects, in animals, in all the living things. And if there is another way that the living places and the living beings communicate, and you are willing to enter playfully with imagination and wonder, trust, you have to kind of go all in. Not completely, but you have to really be in the play, in the playing. And it's not playing in the sense of gambling, and it's not playing in the sense of pure imagination, like sandcastles and such. Though those things are not entirely unrelated. It's not like this kind of play. It's more like the kind of play that happens when two people who have an old affinity for each other come together, and they don't know each other, and they meet, and there's strange recognition, as if I've known this person before. Right? It's that kind of play. Trust me, everything in your body knows much more about the topic at hand than I could ever possibly convey. But it's important to form a vehicle of purpose, intention, engagement, heartfulness, depth, to explore with. My friends look pretty happy with these offerings. It's good to see them. Now see, I have developed a little relationship with these two blue jays over time as a result of such play. And a passerby will think very simply about such things and take pictures of the blue jays. But they won't understand the depth of the play at hand, because they've only seen things like it in fairy tales. So we form the intention to have an adventure, a playful adventure, where there will be mysteries and unexpected signals, encounters, gifts, receptions, transformations, in the old way, in the way before our people became modern, hunting, tool-using, broken monkeys. So we form the intention. You may speak the intention. I will go today to the mountain with my heart and a gift, and I will meet the mountain, and we will remember each other. And when I go, I will leave my sort of city human, modern human mindset behind, because I will be exploring. And so I will be very sensitive in the path, and I will ask the living place, and perhaps specific beings within the living place, the blue jay, the coyote, the sparrow, the eucalyptus, the cactus, the sage plant. I will ask them, please help me to see and learn. I remember you. We come from the same family. I come to you with love and playfulness and respect so that we can learn together. Now, the play becomes alive in different ways and to different degrees in all the unique circumstances that are involved. It's not always the same. And sometimes we will have a very deep adventure, and sometimes we will have just a few noticings, right? New ways of understanding how we are in the world with other living beings. So, I want you to try the adventure, and you can try it anywhere. It's nice if you have a place that is where there are many, many living beings, like what we call a natural place. As if there are any other places. But the humans have put a lot of layers of structure, and they've built cities and towns and things and roads and all of this. But that doesn't really matter because it's still a living place, so you can really do it anywhere. But if you want to explore, if you want to get an unexpected experience of deep relation, it's much easier in a place that's filled with life, all different kinds of life. So I often come to this garden, which is sort of a combination of things, right? It's a living place, tended and managed and sort of built by humans. So one forms the intention, one goes into the living place or meets one's companions. This could be a special tree, a tree that stands out to you. That's what I mean by special in a way. Or a special plant, or insect, or bird, or situation, right? A being isn't just a distinct being. We can bring ways of seeing into the play that assist us. A situation is also kind of like a being, and it's possible to make friends with it if one is so oriented. Yeah. So the idea is to kind of open up a little door in our humanity, step outside the modern part into the living, old, really old aspect. The aspects that are so old that they make language look like something that just started happening yesterday. Right? And this is what I am hoping you will have an experience of, because, well, I should continue with the framework. So one forms the intention, and you don't have to do it, I really want to meet. No, it's not like that. It's more like, the living place. I want to know where we're connected and how we can be together and learn together and grow together and share with one another. Because as a human being, you have very unique qualities in nature, profoundly unique. There's really nothing else. There are very few animals that have the unexpected breadth of capacities that we have as human beings. So if we are sincere and our heart is in our walk, and we settle into our heart, and we walk with reverence and awareness and respect, then the living beings around us, they they recognize that as a kind of not exactly an opportunity, but walls that are otherwise there have come down, and they will sense this. Because all of the living beings are profoundly sensitive. Imagine how sensitive you become if you cannot move. Right? The trees do not walk around. They are profoundly sensitive beings. And they form communities, and they have friends, or something similar. And it's possible to become friends with them. And nature, in language it becomes very troubling, all of these things, because we begin to ask, well, is it this or is it that? This has little to do with it. But one could say, nature is a library of nonverbal languages. And the animals and plants, they know, and the insects and the ground itself, the mountain, it knows all of the things that are happening there. Yeah. In the living place, around the living beings. What has happened a few moments ago? What happened yesterday? What happened a month ago? What happened a year ago? The living places have all this knowledge. And when you begin to relate with them, if you ask them, and if by your kindness and gratitude and trust and openness you have made the invitation, then the living place will respond. And it's really important to take off the clothing of your regular mind and really be in the adventure and realize, oh, this is the ancient way, right? I'm going to hear the old languages that aren't made of words, that our ancestors were deeply intimate with, that our bodies remember, but our minds reject, because we're used to making face noises and seeing writing. We're used to authorities, and we're often used to thinking of humans as so advanced beyond nature that compared to us, nature is just stuff. It's just stuff doing stuff that doesn't really matter. You can see how the clothing of our modernity, right, it evicts us from the possibility of these adventures. I remember one day I went to a tree I know in the morning, and I was just having a moment of play, right? I hadn't set the intention, gone to the place, brought gifts, reverently offered them, wandered, allowed my attention to be directed by the birds or the light glinting in a peculiar way through the branches, or the unusual pattern of leaves in this one spot, or the insect that crosses in front of me, or the one that lands on me, or the swarm of insects nearby, or the pod, like a single organism in many animals of little birds, right, floating over the landscape, and where they go, and what are they doing? The library here is endless and brilliant, and it contains knowledge unlike anything humans are used to. It's a different form. And to be able to participate in this form is a profound privilege. But it's completely ordinary to our human nature. We are born for this. And yet, most of the time, we will live our lives in the clothing, in the little bubble of our you know, relatively functional, utilitarian, slightly rational, irrationally rationalizing mindsets. The living places are hopeful that humans will remember. And this is a great opportunity for us, particularly right now, because our species has gone rogue. Right? It has forgotten all of the old relationships, and more than forgotten them, it has treated with life in a way that is fundamentally dishonorable, cruel, malignant. Now, I speak of the species as a unit, right? Like what is the general trend, and I'm talking about means and averages and things like this. And nature is aware of all of this, all of it, every little interaction, every transformation, because it's happening in its own body. Right? And there are many witnesses. So nature is aware. But she's also aware of the potential for us to return to communion. And each of the living beings is uniquely aware of this. Now, just like us, some of them are sleepy, some of them are awake. Some days we may go out on our adventure and perhaps not too much occurs. On other days, like I remember I went to a tree that I know, and this is sort of weird because here's where nature and modernity cross over, sort of. And I was just silently speaking with my tree, loving it, expressing my gratitude for the life it gives to the world, and noticing all the different ways it gives something back to the world. And I was playing in my imagination, the tree and I were sort of dancing, right? As if the tree could become animate. And as I was about to leave, something called my attention back to the tree. And it has a low canopy, this tree, and the canopy is relatively broad. And I felt my attention drawn over to a particular part of the canopy that I never go to, because it is my habit to approach the tree in a certain way. So I went over to the canopy. Here's the little birds. And I just paid really close attention around this part of the canopy for a few moments, and suddenly I saw underneath some detritus $5 bill. And then a little ways over, a couple of other dollars, and a little ways over here, 2, 3 more. That's a pretty peculiar situation. Now, I don't have to interpret it formally, and I just don't need to. But it felt to me as though the tree were saying, here, over here, there's something that interests your people over here, right? It doesn't obviously care about money. And this is often the way. Nature will signal to draw us to a location, and we should be aware because it's a very complex circumstance, and if there are large predators about or something like this, or there are, let us say, nests of yellow jackets in the ground at a certain time of year, we can get in trouble. We want to be very aware and attentive to the life around us when we're playing in the living places and respectful of it. The Yellow Jackets will teach you astonishing things if you become their friends. And so too will the Coyotes. So, in the adventure, familiar to ancient people is an idea of sharing, and it can be spoken of in different ways. But before we begin our adventure, we want to invest something very personal. And part of this investment is emotional and perspectival, right? We're going to leave our human junk at the door and go with naked minds back into the living places to bring reverence and recognition and remembrance, and perhaps a gift of some kind, something that is important to us, and if it's something very precious, this will change the circumstances, because they will respond to all of the variations in our activity and how we are listening, how we are following, how we are paying attention finally, again to the living beings and the living places. And believe me when I tell you, this is like a fish paying attention to water. We are born for this. We've just forgotten. And nature remembers. Many of the beings in nature remember. This kind of speaking, I will go to the living place to remember and be remembered, with reverence and wonder and love in the old way. When spoken sincerely, this is not regular speech. This is part of how we open the door in the wall of our modernity and find the portal to step beyond. So one of the ways of speaking about a principle within the context I'm reflecting on is something I've partly learned from my friend Ryan Firstdiver. And I cannot really speak to it because it's not from my people. And yet, the underlying principles belong to all of the people. Even if the specific, I should just stop there, I'm getting too wordy. So the ideas are, first to invest something, and our attention and our hearts. These are very powerful, and we should begin there. And by attention, I mean letting the sort of constant machinations of the waking mind, letting that die down, just allowing it to die down, not forcing it to shut off, but just letting it settle. It's astonishing that we could have lost this. This deep filial connection with the intelligences and essences of nature, living places, living beings. Part of how we lost it was with thinking. We stopped thinking. Here, oh, look at all the little birds. Yeah? For some reason, we began to not think of living beings as beings. We started to conceive of them as objects, or we found some angle to look at living beings with that deprived them both of their essential nature and it deprived us both of contact with our own and with theirs. And we became isolated in nature, which is the most bizarre idea. It's, it's the old thing of dying of thirst in a boat on a mountain lake. It's that kind of mess. And so there's a lot of pressure for that to flip over, right? Because this has been going on for long enough, yeah, that there's something inside us that wants the reconnection very badly and is hungry, starving for it. And there's something in all the living beings that want, they want to bring us back into the fold, into the community. Particularly, this is entirely an ordinary concern unless the guy outside the community starts wiping everything and himself out. In which case it becomes urgent that this happen. So this is part of why there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of energy right at the surface, just waiting for someone with the orientation to allow that flow to be reestablished between the human minds, the human cognitium, and the living world. Because that relationship has been way out of broken for a long time. I keep forgetting my little principal things I want to orbit because I'm kind of excited and a little bit nervous. Oh yeah. So I don't want to use value-laden language, but it's as if we are ordinarily on a kind of wavelength, right? It's not just that the frequency of our cognition or our thought or is it alpha waves or delta or theta? It's not just that. It's the species of thought we entertain is discursive. You can look the word up. But it splits us off in many different ways from being present. And so I ask that we become sensitive in the living places when we're on our adventure. To the different frequencies of silence, the different flavors of silence, the different colors of silence, what we could even call the different musics of the living silence, which we are profoundly familiar with, but are not necessarily habituated to understand, to be transformed by, in the same ways that music or kindness, respect and reverence, friendliness transform us. See, in this place, depending on where I am facing, there is always one direction from which machine noise is coming. But within the garden, it makes membranes of different kinds of silence. And these kinds of silence are not precisely a conversation, but they resemble it somewhat. And there are transports in the silence across which knowledge and recognition and other signals of communion are constantly being exchanged. The precursor to something like the meta position of something like the internet, is what's going on. And there's all different temporalities or speeds of formation, presentation, invitation, direction, pointing something out or highlighting something. And it's so rich and layered and profound. Yet all I'm hoping for is that we can have an experience by playing this way together that will introduce us to the surface of this in a way that won't be too shocking. Because the stuff underneath the surface layers is very unexpectedly rich in ways we're not even used to having experience of. And our minds may try to kind of protect us from that. So it's nice to kind of play on the surface for a while in the beginning. So become sensitive to all of the different languages, the languages of color, of form, of movement, of stability, what changes, what doesn't. Who is new here? Who wasn't here yesterday that is here today? Who is leaving? Who is arriving? What time of day is it? What time of the moon is it? What time of the year is it? What time of my private heart? What time of my personal time? Or this place's time of essence? What is the time there? The light and the shading and the color and the form and the relationships between the beings in the living places, all of these things are profoundly rich. And there's an intelligence inside us that was born to interact and recognize all of this, and it's been largely silenced in most of us, exceptions noted. And I think actually in a hopeful sense, nearly all of us, not everybody, but nearly all of us, we carry this hope, right, of reunion. It's a very powerful thing, worth paying attention to. So find and listen to the different wavelengths of the silences that are communicating. And they don't communicate by speech, they communicate by resonance. kind of like osmosis, right? If I'm in a room with another guitar and I pluck a string, yeah, the other guitar will resonate, and in fact the string that I plucked will resonate, or if I fret the string, change its length, other strings may resonate complexly. Something like this is always going on in nature. So I spoke about my friend Ryan, and then I got confused. But I'll just introduce the two topics and the Blackfoot words that are associated with them. And one is to invest in the relationship earnestly and authentically with one's whole heart. One doesn't have to be, it's not a perfectionist game. It's a sincerity game. Or actually, it's not really a game in the aspect of sincerity. It's not mere play. So we go to the living place or the tree or whatever. I mean, one of the things I've sometimes brought trees is a little pile of earth. Right? Now, the tree doesn't need my little pile of earth. That's not the point. Though, if an animal or a being or a place needs something and you bring that, it's very good. Because now you've already established consonance, right? If you can see like, oh, this needs some of this, and you bring a little of whatever that might be. Or you rescue even a very tiny creature, because we think tiny means, we've got tiny backwards. Tiny means like big in another way, right? If we understood this, and these are the kinds of things you will learn, right? Like, oh, the really tiny thing. Well, what's the strongest animal on earth? It's the scarab beetle, the beetle that pushes a little dung ball around. Right? So, you know, the bravest animal on earth is not the lion, it's the mouse. I mean, I'm not saying that explicitly, right? There's courage is uniquely instanced in every being. But pay attention to tiny things, right? Leave the land of your familiar scale of interest and concern and travel to above that scale and way down into the components, right? The little insects, the tiny little phenomena. This will broaden the diversity of the path. So the bringing of the gift, the forming and the bringing of the gift, offering of reverence and remembrance and thanks of gratitude, bring this into your heart as you form the gift, as you enclose the gift if you do, as you carry the gift, and particularly when you offer the gift. Offer it with authentic heartfulness, authentic mindfulness, remembrance of the incredible nurturance and support that each one of us has received from all of the living beings and from the world and from the sky and from before of the before. Remember these things in your heart and give the gift in a moment of loving reverence. This is an example of a sincere demonstration, right? I am here to come together for you, for me, for us, right? In remembrance and recognition and learning. And the forming and the offering of this gift of gratitude and reverence and respect. And this is also true of human relationships. This happens all the time in human relationships. We just don't think of it precisely the same way. You don't have relationships you didn't invest in, right? And it's the same in nature. You have to invest something. And part of what you can invest is an offering of service. This is quite profound. I mean, bring a little something with you to give, but offer service, right? If you will teach me, I will remember what you show me, and I will speak of it to my people, and I will help them to see and help them to remember. Right? I will serve you. If you show me what I can bring that will help, I will work hard to bring what will help. Right? This way of being in the relationship is very profound, because when it is sincere, they will pay attention. They will notice you've taken off the modern human shell, right? And that you've set that aside, and you're now being present in the old way. And they all remember that. They all remember our people being like this. And they will give something back. So the gift in Blackfoot is referred to as saponstan. Hopefully I'm not mangling it too bad. I'll try to stop saying that every time I use a Blackfoot word. Not that I'll be using a whole bunch of them, because my vocabulary is very limited. Saponstan. The offering we bring, both in introducing ourselves. Hi, I am this one. I bring you this gift. I want to understand who you are. Who are you? Here's the other pivot. And be aware that the beings who will introduce themselves to you, or who will give you signals or enter playfully into the path with you, these beings, they may not trust you immediately with good reason, so it may take some time. You might have to practice a bit and show, I'm not just this way today, right? I am this way with you. We are this way together, always. And even in the recognition, right? The recognition of the tree, it comes from before being human. It's very old. The intelligence in the eye of the hummingbird, it's from before being human. It's not an accident that the world has been rocked by an octopus and a human being having a relationship, right? It's not an accident. This is what I'm talking about. This kind of thing, honestly, if I were to be very blatant about it, there isn't anything else going on in nature. It's just that humans have defected from all of this. And we would be very excited if we could return. Trust me, you'll be very... you will see and learn and be in the world in an entirely different way, because a world you have never imagined will slowly reveal itself to you and invite you in. It has nothing to do with whether this is magic, or there's a, game theoretical genetic explanation. It doesn't even make no difference whatsoever. You don't have to worry about what it is unless you're trying to define it. Saponstan is the gift that we bring. And if our service and our gift, we're not signing up for a job, we're giving a gift of love, right, in service. Yeah? And it's a gift that will heal us. It will heal us, right? It will heal me first. And then if I'm lucky or good enough to share it somehow with others so that it reaches them and comes inside their interiority and comes to life, yeah? Now something really beautiful is going on. And the living world has re-entered our experience of our life, and we realize, oh my God, I'm living in a universe of anciently involved intelligences that have actual character, maybe even something resembling personality, but they're not verbal. And so I have to find another way to participate with them. Now here's one of the weird blocks. There's a bunch of strange blocks in our modern thought, and what I mean by blocks are like occlusions, blockages, clogs. And one of them was this thing where we started thinking about living beings as less than whatever, right? And we also began to think of them as things, because they don't respond if I say, like, hello tree, can you tell me your name? To this tree. It probably would, but it might take 3 months. A tree is in a completely different kind of time. So the tree doesn't answer me in English. I presume, oh, there's no one home. It's not like, it's the opposite. What's actually going on is the opposite of that. There's no one home in verbal land. But in all the other dimensions, fully, personated, in the sense of not humanated, but being, right? A being, an actual being. And the living place is like this, the mountain is like this, the valley, the lake, the meadow, the stream. But also situations are like this, right? It's not just the discrete beings, it's their symphony together, it's what they're doing together, right? This becomes a kind of a being that you can relate with and take part in. So the intention, the leaving aside of the human shell, right? Walk outside. And when you leave that, leave the religion stuff too. Be sure and leave all the metaphysics, right? Let nature have a clean canvas to paint with you on. This is what I'm asking. To the best of your abilities, right? No one, again, it's not a perfection. It's not a perfection play. But one of the really bizarre blockages was simply okay. So I'm not going to tell you how to think or exactly how to use your mind. That would be indelicate, to be kind, and also against my purposes, because I want you to discover your own way. Each person's way is unique, right? It may share common ground with me, it may not. It may share deep common ground and subtle difference. It may share subtle common ground and deep difference. That's not the point. So, there's a perspective that I've found very useful, and it's important to me. The coyote is not doing well. Yeah. The coyote needs something. I can feel it's not doing well. It's tired. It needs something. But I don't know what to bring it. And I don't have anything with me that is likely to help it. Sometimes it is difficult. It becomes difficult. And this is when we have to actually work hard. Because the living beings or the living places, they will respond to our unique humanness, right? And they will select something that is well suited for us, for our way of being in a role-like capacity, in the between of nature and humans. Because you see, the humans have these incredible abilities, right? I can go right now and buy a chunk of meat, in theory, and come back and give it to the coyote. I do not know what it needs. But a problem has now been introduced to me, right? Here is the coyote. It does not appear to be doing well. It's awake too early. It looked dejected and not appropriately, its situational awareness was very limited, and its spirit was downtrodden, downcast. I could feel the way it held its head, its ears were low. I could feel something is not well here. The first time I saw it, right? Because otherwise it would have been more alert. And then when I saw it now, it just looked at me like, can you help me? Can you help me? Can anyone help me? Will someone help me? It was a look where, as if to say, your people no longer really help our people, and I don't feel entitled to ask, but if you could help me, please help me. It was this kind of look. Or also, please don't threaten me. And now my heart has shifted because I am listening. And I do not know what I will do yet. But this is part of today's adventure. This is part of this. And this has happened to me before. The living place has taken me to something where something has gone wrong, right? And this is a common aspect of the communion, because in certain situations only the humans could fix it. Sometimes it's something the humans started the problem most of the time, right? In the first place. Yeah. So what I was going at briefly when I saw suddenly the coyote and was really, it has changed me. The coyote is carrying a weight, yeah? And I am offering to carry part of that weight if I can. This is part of my offering, right? My saponstan. There's two more things. Okay, so the first is we thought of animals and living places and plants as things. This was unwise because this categorization deprives us of the capacity of relation with them and causes us to believe that it's not possible. When in fact even that isn't true, because you can have a very deep relationship with a book or a cup, something very close to you, some object. You can have a very intimate relationship with an object where there's a kind of communion, right? There's a resonance between you and this object. But my point is, it was a radical revolution in my mind when I began to think of living beings and places as people. This is an important, it will not do for you to think of them as things. This will not work because things don't talk to you, but people do. So, and the way that I think of living beings as people is a little bit different from how I'm used to thinking of them, in that a bee is at once a specific bee, this bee in front of me, or a sparrow, but it is also all of the bees in all of time. And so how I treat with this bee will become known to all of the bees, yeah? This perspective. Now you can say, well, that's not scientific. I'm not trying to be scientific. I'm trying to talk about the before of the damage that representational cognition did to us. And also, you will discover whether or not, for yourself, whether or not all that I am speaking of is relevant to your experience or not, or how and in which parts, and you may extend what I have learned dramatically. I hope you do. And I consider what I have learned to be very, very meager. I am no expert. I'm just like a child trying to understand old mysteries. So, when I see a tree, it is the tree people, but it is this tribe of the tree people, and is this specific tree, and they are all there in this tree. Or this sparrow, or this blue jay, or this coyote. Yeah. Because when we encounter a coyote, and we have a relationship with it, we are relating with its people through the local one. And this way of thinking is important to me, useful to me, more like what my experience is than what I am otherwise inclined to think, particularly if I'm being rational or scientific. And I'm not denigrating those aspects, they have their place. And even once we've become involved in the play, there may be aspects of intellect and rationality and science that we want to bring into the play. For example, if we want to rescue something, I might need to know what kind of food that it needs, right? Now, the coyote could just be like, I can't sleep, I'm gonna go. Maybe it got kicked out of its den, I don't know. But it does not look happy. It's downcast. Something's wrong. I can tell. I now know where it lives, and I know what time it came out tonight. This is also important. If you encounter something that you want to see again, note the place and time that you saw it. Yeah? But I just don't know how to help the coyote yet. Okay, so sometimes you will encounter a problem where you don't know what to do or you feel helpless. And you'll have to overcome that eventually, right? You'll have to be like, you can't be stuck in that all the time. It's okay for you to experience it though. Sometimes you may encounter something where you don't know how to interact with the situation in the right way, in a good way, in a way that demonstrates ponston, but also is not naive, right? Because if I were naive, I could just say, well, I'm going to go over to the coyote and take a look at it without my camera. And that might not be entirely naive, but in this case, I can tell the coyote it wants help, but it does not want me to come over and touch it, right? It's not a doll. It's not a cartoon. There might be weird situations in which some kind of direct contact will happen, or especially in a rescue, we may need to, find a way to, with some degree of safety, approach the animal, communicate our intentions, negotiate moving it, and so on. But it's very important to understand, to be in your mind in a way that recognizes these are people. These are people. There are peoples. They are all one, the people of the earth. They're unified there. They're unified in the before. And they are diversified down here. And they are all in relationships. And we should respect their relationships to the degree that we are capable of, to the degree that we can perceive them. Right? We can't be superhuman necessarily. But seeing them as people will mean when you encounter a new being, you will want to know, you will introduce yourself. And not with your name. Maybe with how you would like to be in the relationship. I am one who loves you. I am one with reverence for your people. I am one who remembers. Help me to remember, and I will help you. We will help each other. This kind of way of being in it. This kind of introduction. Which perhaps after the video I may make between myself and the coyote. It is important to have experience of not knowing what to do. And it can be difficult. I hope the coyote is not going to die there. I am concerned that it is dying. The way that it is laying on the dirt pile. The spirit of the coyote, it's like it's facing something inevitable, and it's profoundly sad. I must continue with the video for the moment, because this is, this is what I'm doing. So seeing the beings as people, introducing yourself, and then listening. Yeah? It's okay if there's no response right away. And the response may come in a way you're not expecting that does not enter your consciousness directly, right? Like what happened with the tree and the money. You may just notice something suddenly, right? Ask for the living beings to lead your attention. Ask for them to lead what you pay attention to, and also how you understand, like how you interpret it. Give me your interpretive awareness, O living beings, so that I can not only see situations but understand them, and this will enable me to respond with kindness and intelligence and respect. This kind of thing. This deep sincerity is very powerful. You'll find it just as powerful in every relationship, human and non. All I'm trying to say is that the entire planet is aware of this kind of thing. All of the living beings. With what are they aware? I cannot answer the question. With their essence, and their essence woven into the anciently evolved and new relationships that they are forming. The silence right now is profound. The Blackfoot word for, well, this is a concept. So there is a concept of transfer, right? If I teach you a skill, let's say handwriting, then I have transferred something to you. Right? If I give you knowledge, even the knowledge encoded today, and again, this video is strangely self-referencing, as you hopefully have seen some evidence of. And by the way, that quality is a signal about something. It's a signal that we're interacting with the world in a way we don't usually interact, and this is transforming the possibilities dramatically. So the living beings and the living places will make transfers of knowledge with you. And sometimes it will be something very simple, and sometimes it will be something very profound. And sometimes the profound thing will unfold over time, right? And sometimes the whole experience will mostly happen in a brief exchange. Yeah? And there's knowledge in nature, and the old people, because the knowledge couldn't be encoded in language by itself, they employed song, dance, and ceremony as containers to protect the knowledge and to make it transferable, to transfer it between them when the transfers were appropriate. When the transfers were appropriate. I'm probably going to have to end here. I may continue in another video. I think I managed to cover most of the topics, but Bomuksen is what the living beings will give back to you in the form of knowledge and roles, right? You will be given roles and recognition and sharing. And they will return something very profound whenever we are very sincerely in the play. But begin with a light heart, yeah? Begin with a playful, curious mind. Have the adventure, return to your human little world, reflect upon it. And certainly, if you wish, by all means, share about it. For this is something we can play and learn with together over time. And hopefully I will have the inspiration to continue this video shortly. For now, I'm going to go see what I can find out about the coyote without getting in trouble, without being naive. When we have received a transfer, it is very good to celebrate that, yeah? To have a dance, to celebrate it. See, this is where things become complex. But still, to celebrate the transfer is a simple thing, in whatever way seems appropriate. Bring a gift, sing, dance, sit quietly with the beings involved, express your deep gratitude and perhaps your humility, and just remember, experience the joy of rediscovering these anciently conserved miracles within us, within the world, in our capacity to reach across from the humans back to origin in the living beings, and from the living beings across back into the humans. Thank you for joining me. Enjoy the adventure.